Good morning, boys and girls, classes. I come to you from the mountains of Colorado. And boys and girls, I just can't not read about bears. And so you never know what's going to walk behind me. So keep your eyes open for anything behind me. Welcome to Coleman's Corner, or Cindy's Corner. I want you, if you have the book, The New Bear at School, would you go get it and read along with me? Because I'm kind of a far away so that we can get the background of the mountains and whatever decides to come to the water. So boys and girls, today, I have to get situated. We're going to read The New Bear at School. How many of you have ever seen a bear? If you've seen a bear, make sure after the video that you comment and tell your friends. This is a great book. And are bears scary? Or do we just think they are? I think they're just as scared of us as we are of them. But this book was written by Carrie Weston and co-authored by Tim Warnes. The New Bear at School. He looks like he's excited to go to school. The day that Mrs. Cluck said there was going to be a new animal in class, everyone was very excited. When Mrs. Cluck said that the new animal was a bear, the other animals squealed with delight. And hers says today is Tuesday. Today is Tuesday. The weather is, it says, mostly sunny. We're a little on the cloudy side today, so if it starts raining, we'll go quick. Letitia, the rabbit, wondered if it might be a fluffy pink bear, like the one on her lunchbox. Maxwell, the mole, wanted a floppy brown bear with velvet paws. The mice hoped for a bear in Wellingtons and a blue coat. Fergus, the fox cub, thought any teddy bear would be just fine. So, when the classroom door opened and Mrs. Cluck introduced Boris, everyone screamed, for Boris wasn't a teddy bear. He was an enormous, hairy, scary grizzly bear. Mrs. Cluck told Boris she'd give him his uniform tomorrow and found him a seat next to Maxwell. But he sat down and there was a loud crack. It made Maxwell hide his face in his paws. "Oh, Boris," said Mrs. Cluck, "why don't you sit on the floor instead?" Why do you suppose he needed to sit on the floor? That's right, he was too big. He was enormous. Mrs. Cluck gave Boris a new book and a pencil. He was very proud indeed. With a big, friendly grin, Boris turned to show the mice. But Boris forgot how fierce his teeth were. He forgot how big his paws were. And he forgot how sharp his claws were. Somehow, the mice scattered across the classroom. Somehow, the pages of his new book got ripped. Somehow, there was panic everywhere. Boris is too big, cried one little mouse. Boris is too hairy, yelled another. Boris is too scary. They all squeaked together. Oh, Boris, said Mrs. Cluck, please try to be more careful. Could he help it? No. At lunchtime, everyone sat together. There was not enough room on the bench for Boris, but nobody moved over. That wasn't very nice, was it? So he sat all by himself and dipped his big paw into the large jar of honey his mama had packed for him. When lunchtime was over, Mrs. Cluck said everyone could go off and play. There they go, not Boris. The mice began to play a game of hide and seek. Look at Boris hiding. Everyone ran to find a place to hide, but Boris was too big. So Boris shut his eyes and counted instead. 1, 2, 3, coming to get you, Boris boomed. Maxwell ran, crying to Mrs. Cluck. Let's go inside and play some quiet games, said Mrs. Cluck. And Boris, please try to be less scary, dear. The animals sat together in a circle. There was no space for Boris. Boris had nobody to play with and nobody to talk to. Tears filled his big brown eyes, rolled down his long nose, and splashed on the floor. I'm a scary bear, he sniffed. I'm a hairy bear, he sobbed. I'm just a great big grizzly bear. It seemed like a very long afternoon. At last, it was time to go home. Mrs. Cluck stood and waved as the animals set off through the woods. Letitia hopped along the bank. Fergus chased the little mice around the tree. Maxwell scampered through the leaves. Boris plodded along, far behind. Suddenly, from a hollow tree, leaped the rat pack. Look at them. They're going to get them. Well, we'll see if it isn't the crybabies, said the meanest rat. Letitia, Maxwell, Fergus, and the mice trembled while the rat pack circled around them. Oh, they're scared. They're big bullies, aren't they? That rat pack. The rats didn't see Boris plodding along the path. All Boris could see was lots of excitement ahead. wanted to join the fun. Boris stood up tall to greet his new friends with the biggest, wildest bear grin and yikes! It's a hairy bear! Help! It's a scary bear! Quick, run! It's a hairy, scary, grizzly bear! The rotten rats ran away as fast as their skinny legs could carry them. But I only wanted to say hello, called Boris. When Boris turned around, the other animals cheered. Boris is a hairy bear, they sang. Boris is a scary bear, they chanted. We're so glad that Boris is our grizzly bear. Suddenly, Boris felt very shy. If you're going to be a bear, he said very gently, then it's probably best to be a hairy, scary grizzly bear. The next day at school, the animals couldn't wait to tell Mrs. Cluck how Boris had saved them from the nasty rat pack. Oh, Boris, said Mrs. Cluck, what a good bear you are. At story time, everyone rushed to gather around Mrs. Cluck. There wasn't much room once Boris had sat down. But the rest of the class, they didn't mind one little bit. Where do you think they're going to end? They all had a soft, warm place to sit, after all, on Boris's lap. And he was a good bear. And boys and girls, I sure hope you enjoyed this. And I'm not sure if the chipmunk ran where the camera could see it, but there was a chipmunk running around me. I hope you enjoyed the story time today, The New Bear at School. Please give it a thumbs up and comment and tell me if you've ever seen a bear. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow on Cindy's Corner.